Hi everybody, I'm Bree the Plant Lady checking in with a weekly garden tour. I have been away all week, so there has been no maintenance, no changes done to the garden at all. But I wanted to start here on my front porch where I have displayed all those fabulous gourds that I acquired last weekend in the North Carolina mountains. I have them sitting on our joggling board, which is probably a piece of furniture that most people are unfamiliar with. And I posted this on Facebook and had a bunch of questions. So I thought I would just show it real quick. So you see, it's really practical for a narrow space like this front porch that's only about 4 foot deep. You can't really fit furniture on here. And this is a piece of furniture that has its heritage deep in the low country, like in Charleston. You'll see these outside of restaurants and they're just really fun. Basically they're like a rocking chair, but instead of going back and forth, like forward and backward, you actually go side to side. So let's see if you can see here. You see this mechanism? And I don't want to joggle it too much because I don't want to mess up my display. And I have a fabulous writing spider that is attached to it, which I'll turn the camera around so you can see that. So here's the information. Joggle Factory, like joggling board. As you can see, I think it's just the perfect place for this display of all these awesome gourds. But to make it even more authentically Halloweenish, we have oh gosh, that poor thing. It's should I try and release it? It's probably suffocated. I don't know. But here she is. She's been living here for several months and she's laid ample eggs for next year. And I just think that it's important to live with spiders. Like, I know for some people this would totally freak you out. It doesn't bother me, so that's good. I also don't understand why people decorate for Halloween when you could just let nature decorate for you. I do think the front porch looks great. I can't believe how huge these coleus have gotten. You see way back in there where the pot is, and these tomatoes are just rock stars and they're so delicious. This is that gin fizz, which is definitely my new favorite slicer. My friend Richard Todd gave these 2 plants to me and boy, they have been great. Look at that big honking fruit right there. And out here into the driveway, this San Marzano is looking terrible. Like really terrible. But there's still a lot of fruit on it. I'm not really sure why it's wilting. It's not dry. But that's okay. When these fruit ripen, I will cut that down. I have been removing some spent tomato plants. The wall is thick and awesome. And of course, the rice plants, which I'm going to do a separate video on how to harvest the seed. Now remember, I'm planning to use this seed for growing again next year, but I will go through the process of how you harvest it for the purpose of consumption. But that is not my goal. Rice seed was just so hard to find that I want to save all of it for growing again. But you can see the one on the right was about 2 weeks later. So that is actually the right stage for eating. This is the right stage for harvesting, for saving the seed. And you can see it's significantly browner, whereas these green ones are more what you would harvest for consumption. But again, I'm going to make another video. I'm going to do that tomorrow. Overall, all of this area that gets watered every day with a hose has done great. The Tibacina's not quite blooming, but it's close. Look, you can see some purple starting to show. So maybe by next week, which I'll be a day late for the garden tour next week because I will actually be in Minneapolis for a wedding. So here in the south border, everything's looking good. That one tomato that hadn't died looks like it's dying now. didn't produce much. But the papyrus is, I think, the coolest thing ever. I absolutely love that plant. The fact that it's been hardy is such a bonus. And another plant that's been hardy is the snail vine, which is blooming right here. And it's really growing all through this bed. You can see like it's coming out through the edges. It's that tri-leaf, that legume. So I suspect that as we head into shorter days, I'll get a lot more flowering. You see it's coming out all through there as well. And it's twining itself up along the staircase. This border, the Perennial Peninsula, it's just, this is like the driest part of my garden. It's really hard to keep this watered, but things are looking all right. This just never gets filled in. I've had a lot of deer browse in my absence, but that's okay because they're just nibbling mostly on sweet potatoes. See, you can see there's a bunch of tips missing there. I don't care. At this stage, if the deer want to eat sweet potatoes, they can have it. But I can't wait to show you what the Treasure Island sweet potato arch looks like. It's totally filled in, and it's got that black-eyed Susan vine growing up with it, which is also, that's a self-sown vine. I planted the Treasure Islands on purpose, and I love this. I irrationally love this. Like, next year I'm going to try to do it again. Nothing ever works when I try to replicate it, so I'm just trying to soak up how cool it is. I think it's one of the prettiest things in the garden. But this is where I noticed a lot of deer browse. You see here along the edge, all up through here. Like, you can tell it's not a rabbit because rabbits aren't getting this high in the air. But again, it doesn't really matter. It's not like they're gonna rip it off the arch. But yeah, the deer have been busy while I was away. And we've finally been harvesting eggplants. In fact, we're gonna eat some eggplant tonight. I'm glad to see that they are flowering and fruiting. This border, it's amazing, these tomatoes that are planted just in the straight 1 cubic foot bags of soil cube don't need to be watered like ever. These are like the lowest maintenance tomatoes. It's awesome. And pretty parasols, the best echinacea. I cannot say enough about this plant. Pollinators love it. It's so beautiful. This is the 3rd flush of flowers that it's done this spring. So if you're into echinacea, this is one that you have to have. It's called Pretty Parasols. Now, more deer browse in front of that on the peanut. And often rabbits eat the peanuts, but this, because it's up higher, I'm pretty sure that's all deer. That you see how they just nibble off the leaves. Again, at this stage, we're in the middle of September. It kind of doesn't matter. Like, that's going to be a lot of peanuts that are in the ground when this gets harvested next month. And I wanted to show you, here are the pegs. So this is actually where the peanuts grow off of. So these pegs actually dive into the ground, and then the nut, which is not actually a nut, it's a fruit, forms on the bottom of that peg. And so then when you rip the plants out, the root zone is covered in the peanuts. I'll definitely make a video showing that process, but you wait until the peanut foliage starts to get ugly, and that's the sign that it's time to harvest. So it's not ready yet. Again, over to this border. The buckwheat is looking past its prime, and I've been going back and forth in my mind whether I should do something about it or not. And I guess it's just going to depend on how hectic my week gets. This okra is absolutely amazing. Now, I missed it at first, so I'm just letting a handful that have gotten too large. I'm just going to let these go to seed, so I'll have seed for next year. But look at how huge that fruit is. But they're so delicious. I like to harvest them probably by tomorrow. I want them to be a little bit bigger than this, but not too much bigger. That's my my criteria for okra, but it's just a gorgeous leaf, beautiful pink petiole, just an incredible stature. And notice the deer have left it alone. Now, there's some nibbling, and that's from grasshoppers. And I have a ton of grasshoppers, and they are absolutely enormous. I don't understand why birds don't eat them. But, again, here, peanuts, the deer came through and browsed this. The areas where the squash are growing, the deer left alone. So you can kind of see how you can protect plants by strategically planting things that they don't like. But now look at here. Like I was talking about grasshoppers. Look at that enormous grasshopper. And I have thousands of them. I don't think they're doing any like serious damage. Like I don't think the grasshoppers are the ones eating the peanuts. I'm pretty sure that's deer. But the grasshoppers eat a fair amount of foliage. There's no question. But again, these squash, I swear the trick to having squash this late in the season is planting it in July. There's no two ways around it. This bed got planted on July 3rd, and I am still harvesting squash on a regular basis. Look at that. This is the new variety from All American Selections called Goldilocks. And it is a cute little yellow ball, and it's delicious. And of course, behind that is sesame. You can see all those seed pods developing and still blooming. It's such a pretty flower. And again, you don't see any nibbling on the sesame at all. So that's a really good plant for this purpose of, you know, keeping animals at bay. You're never getting rid of them. Just remember that. Don't be unrealistic. I have to show you this beautiful rose. This is from First Editions, and I will find the name. I love how it looks in bud. I just think this is so pretty, so delicate. And the flowers are kind of bicolor. They're like this dark pink and white combo. It's really nice. All right. Seminole pumpkin update. It's really growing. And not only is it growing all through this border, but some volunteer plants came up since we had that big tree removed, and now it's growing out of the woodland, and I'm training it to go across. It's so pretty. I love this foliage. It's just, to me, it's like so dynamic and interesting. And here's what the fruit look like when they're little. I swore I was gonna harvest a bunch like this because you can eat them just like zucchini and they're delicious. But I'm not gonna harvest it until I see more fruit. Even though I'm sure there are more fruit, and wait till I show you what the wave looks like. It's awesome. And speaking of the woodland, you know, I haven't done anything to this since the tree came out. But it's really amazing with so much more light, all the stuff that's growing. And look, there's some lycoris that are popping up. This extraordinarily invasive black runner colocasia, which, try as I might, I'll never get rid of it because it spreads so vigorously. I highly regret letting that come to my property. I do not recommend it. But here's that pumpkin, and it's growing from way back in the woods, like way back there. You see it's growing up over a camellia. And all of these tomatillas are also self-sown. Like the seed must wash from the top of the property and come down here. Believe it or not, this is actually a walkway that I'm standing in front of. Obviously, I haven't used the walkway since all this stuff started to grow on its own. The nice thing is it's all annual. It's all gonna die with frost. So it's not like it blocks the entrance forever. I just think it looks so cool. I love this pumpkin so much. And I'm sticking to my decision that sunflowers in September are more special than sunflowers in July. But I think you should do both. You should seed sunflowers early, like in May, and actually I always try to succession sow sunflowers so that you can have them blooming longer, but I just think those ones at the feed tank look great, as do these right here. And it's just, they're so cheerful. The bees, it's just like there's always bees on them. They're never without a pollinator. And at night, the bees are slow and lazy and they kind of just go to sleep. So this round of broccoli has been planted. You see, we did get some rain while I was gone, so all the BT washed off. So I have to reapply BT, because when you don't, this happens. Cabbage worms are so capable. Fall crops of broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage are just so hard because of the cabbage worms. But I irrationally love those crops too, and I want to grow my own, so I just have to get over it. And I can say that all of these seedlings have definitely jumped since I applied the kelp. So I need to fertilize with the kelp again and then treat everything with BT. And I think these will finally be on their way to looking good. And one of my favorite tomato varieties is just starting to finally kick in. So this is one called Peche, or garden peach. And it's really impossible to see, but it feels like peach skin, like there's little fur on it. So it's not smooth in the same way that normal tomatoes are. And they're really like tangy and delicious. I'm really happy to see that I have so much fruit. And actually today, my friend was visiting, and God, she came up with a really cute name for this walkway. It was something. I'll have to ask her, I already forgot. But, you know, the Tithonia, and then all of these tomatoes. And there's a ton of ripe tomatoes in here. I just need to come back with my harvest basket. But look at all of these. So these, again, are the container tomatoes that got potted in late June. And I know I'm gonna sound like a broken record, but if you live in a warm climate, I highly recommend giving this method a try. Don't rush summer. Actually plant a spring garden and get your summer crops planted later than usual. I really think you will reap the rewards just like I am this year. You know, I was totally freaked out about not getting stuff planted, quote unquote, on time. And now I'm not regretting for even a second that I was later than usual. Because honestly, my garden has never looked this nice this late into the season. Usually by the middle of September, I'm anxious to rip stuff out. And I don't feel that nearly as much as usual. This one bed is this place where I'm like, it's starting to drive me crazy. This was the first bed I planted, and it was in the beginning part of June. So there's a huge difference in the plant's performance planting in early June compared to late June. I will say that I think the okra look great, and I have more sunflowers coming. And this is hands down the best zinnia I've ever grown. I've talked about it every time. Let me re-show it to you. This is the Queen Lime Blush. And I'll show you what Queen Lime Orange looks like, and you'll see why I think blush is better. I mean, it's getting a little bit of powdery mildew, but that is totally normal. I live in North Carolina. I cannot expect things to not get powdery mildew. But the flowers are so perfect, and they keep blooming. Now, in contrast, here is the Queen Lime Orange. And these are getting some sort of mite. So all the flowers look gross. I probably won't get any seed because the mites are going through and eating the seeds. Look at how ugly the flowers are when they're old. You know, in general, these look terrible, and they have a lot more powdery mildew on them compared to the plants of the Queen Lime blush. I'm seeing more okra than I need to harvest. But yeah, look at these. Like yesterday, I had to stop myself from starting to pull these out. But I just think these zinnias look really ugly. So this is probably gonna be the first thing that I do. I'm not gonna rip them out, I'm gonna cut them down, because I don't wanna disturb everything else that's in this bed. But I mean, look at how gross and ugly that plant is. And it's like, the old flowers don't even look nice either. So, not all zinnias are created equal. That is an important lesson. And I went through and trimmed this edge because it was growing like way out into the lawn. I was like, oh, I want to train the deer just to nibble the edges back. I know that's not how it works, but this is hands down my favorite way to use sweet potato. And I'm just so excited because these leaves are delicious. You can eat them in salads, you can make smoothies. I've just started eating them because there's so many. And you know, after frost, sometime November, I cannot wait to harvest these tubers and, you know, to see what the yield will be from this massive ground cover. I don't talk about the succulents all that often, but I just thought they were so pretty. I love these combinations, and you know, I do overwinter these in my heated shed, and the key is just to not let them get any water at all. So none of these are hardy. These all stay in these pots and they go completely dry through the winter, and then they come back out in spring. These pots are doing great, and lots more tomatoes here on this container planting. So many tomatoes. It's really, really exciting. I no longer feel like a tomato failure, you guys. I was an utter and complete tomato failure July into early August, but now I'm having like a whole new experience, and it feels great. So I'm 100% convinced and super sad to say that I think this lilac, which is my favorite lilac, Syringa hyacinthiflora XL, I'm pretty sure it's dying. I don't know. I mean, I'm gonna leave it, and if it flushes out next year, then I'll be pleasantly surprised, but it's looking pretty rough. I think we let it get too dry. It's got a lot of competition here. I actually wouldn't mind taking out this Yoshino cryptomeria. We really don't need it. When I planted it 10 years ago, we wanted the screening, but now it's just too tall, and I have plenty of other plants that provide screening behind it, so we really don't need it here. Ginger lily corner. I wish there was smell-o-vision for all of you. These have done great here in this part shade under live oak. And as we come into the front yard, I am so excited with how this has turned out. We had a group of college students here. I was not home, so my husband had to lead the tour. But he was like, oh yeah, they all sat on the hammock. It's like, oh good, at least someone used it. That they were here from NC State going through the Foodscape to get ideas for interesting planting designs and permaculture. And I think that he said they were all pretty impressed with this pumpkin patch out here, which this is everything I was hoping it would be. And I remember how worried I was that the pumpkins didn't germinate. And so I'm awfully glad they did. So the whole bed is pretty much full. I haven't seen any fruit forming here, but I think it's just a matter of time. So look at that. It's gotten great density, and I love that textural contrast between the turf and, you know, the big tropical foliage. I also love that it's not so tall, because in years past, for the summer installations, I did things that were enormous, like giant sunflowers and 14-foot sorghum, and it totally shielded the house. And I really like that you can actually see over this now. It doesn't feel as imposing. And of course, the big tropical explosion of the foundation landscape. The castor bean seems to captivate everyone's attention. And that was self-sown. I didn't even plant that. There's a million seeds coming. I've already cut a lot of seed off just because they can be very invasive. Not like showing up everywhere, but you know, they will seed right here in place. The seeds are these really cool kind of spiky balls. Inside of them, it almost looks like a tick. I'll have to show you guys. I'll make a video on gathering seed this fall. I'll be sure to include castor bean. But the dahlias are finally starting. They're still not what I thought they would be. I keep seeing everybody else's dahlias on Instagram. I'm like, I don't understand. But I mean, they're growing. You see? Great vegetation. And there's a few flowers, and they're very pretty. These are the ones from Floret Flower. Just not as many blooms as I had hoped by this time of year. Of course, the Cleome has done great. That's getting eaten pretty quickly. That's just sort of its cycle. And the grasshoppers are doing a number on the bananas. So the grasshoppers are the main thing that are chewing on the banana leaves. I mean, I'm not going to do anything about it, but other than observe it. And then the senna, I'm really excited about. This is the first time I've grown this. And it's really amazing, like when you touch it, it's super soft. It smells like buttered popcorn. It literally smells like a movie theater. Not that I've been to a movie theater in a really long time, but wow, it's just, it's so good. It's worth growing just for that. However, I think that it's gonna get really cool, bright yellow flowers. But, you know, it's just gotten so big. Like, I got this at Big Bloomers as a 1 quart. I don't think it's hardy. That's fine. I don't really want anything to be perennial in this bed because I like changing it. But I love the texture. And check out all of these seed pods and flowers on the Thailand giant colocasia. Like, I was excited to have one. And I have what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 on just this one stalk, and then another 2, 3, 4, 5 that have formed over there. I am going to have so much Thailand giant seed, and these come true from seed, and you actually grow these from seed. Like, they're not hardy here. We're too wet in the winter. But all of that grew from seed that was sown this spring. Like, they're just so crazy awesome. Look at how big that leaf is. It's unavoidable. Anybody who pulls into the driveway is just kind of like, oh my God, look at that craziness. They're not a single leaf that's like actually the size of the Prius, but look at how good it does at hiding the Prius from this view. And finally here, the foundation landscape along the master bedroom. Again, filled with the Treasure Island sweet potato, which I have to say, I think that's the best new plant introduction to hit the marketplace. And I've written to the company that distributes this in hopes of getting some information about where this will be next spring so that all of you can be ready and waiting, because this is the best sweet potato that I have ever grown. There is no question. There's 5 varieties in the Treasure Island series. Their cultivar names are Polynesian. I don't know how to say them, therefore they don't stick in my mind. But really, any of the 5 are awesome. This is the same variety that's growing over the arch. So you can see, you can grow it as a ground cover, or you can just grow it up something. So if you don't have a ton of room to let it just, you know, scramble around, it's fine. Just get a cattle fence arch and let it scramble on that. And I hope you've enjoyed today's garden tour. I look forward to sharing more updates and actually getting some real gardening videos made, hopefully this week while I'm home. I'm not quite at the stage where I'm doing a lot. I'm certainly not in the stage where I want to tear any of this out. But I definitely have more seeds to sow, and I might be taming some zinnias and definitely harvesting some rice seed. So stay tuned for more videos this week. And thank you all so much for watching. Have a great one, everybody.